how old it is. But we went walking over to it, and we thought, well, it's probably locked up. And to our surprise, the front door opened right up, and we went in there, and the glass windows they had and the ambience, everything was so incredible that not only did we take shots for the album there, which you're seeing on the cover, but we actually got some good video footage on the inside of me performing a couple of blues songs by Mississippi Fred McDowell. So that was a real lucky stumble for us.
Those churches, I spent some time in California. I was in Reno, Lake Tahoe. I actually went and saw the Who at Harvey's in Lake Tahoe 3 years ago. But I drove up from Reno. They have a tree there that's got all these shoes on it. Everybody comes and writes notes and puts it on this tree. It's like in Northern California, actually, I think, area. And then I ran into one of those old school churches. It was really cool. You pull off the side of the road, and it was like Little House on the Prairie. Really small and thin and narrow, and and the other cool thing of my time in California, I was in San Diego again to see the Who, but I drove all the way on I-8 and I went almost to the Salton Sea. So I was in the Imperial Desert, I think it was. So that's the second lowest besides you guys, I think, over in that area.
We visited the Salton Sea about 2 years ago. It's very interesting down there.
Yeah. El Sorrento, I think, was the town, but it was so cool because I'm Wisconsin flat, and I was watching the news, and the lady's like, the mountains in the desert in San Diego, and I'm like, where, how? I want to go. I literally did it, after the Who concert the next day. I could have went down to San Diego, so I'm missing persons, a club. I'm on vacation, man. I want to go out in the desert and see the life, That's, and that speaks to me, too, bro, about the desert, the stuff you write. John the Revelator. John the Baptist. Talk about that one, because that's kind of where the desert, traveling, karma, your music, faith, that kind of leads into that, because I did play it.
Well, I always felt that there's a lot of mystical overtones in the desert. A lot of bands from around the world will travel to Joshua Tree here in Southern California and Yucca Valley, 29 Palms, the Mojave Desert where we are. And the reason, Tom, is exactly what you're saying. There is songs in the desert, and I can't explain it to you any better than that. But if you just go spend time alone, as any spiritual man would do, to go be alone with his creator in nature, as Scripture says, God is worshipped by men, but not. He doesn't live in a house built by men. God does not dwell in a building that men built. In other words, He's everywhere. And being out in the wilderness, and 2 years ago, I had an even greater property with about 5 to 10 acres on the side of a mountain in the desert, and I could wake up early around 4:30 or 5 a.m. and walk around the mountaintop there, and I can see, as the sun came up, I could see nature waking up. I could see little bunnies poking their heads out of the hole, and little things coming alive, little gophers, and little this and that. And man, you couldn't find better inspiration, because what it does is it clarifies your thinking to large themes. And I think that Jim Morrison of The Doors tried to explain a little bit of this when he would go out into the desert and come back with songs. And Robbie Krieger, the guitar player for The Doors, he says, well, I'm going to write some too, because, the label wants more songs. And he says, what should I write about? He says, I feel like I should write about fire and water and earth or something, to keep up with you, Jim. And Jim told him, he says, just write about universal themes, large themes. Don't write about very pinpointed little detailed things. Write about very broad subjects like the elements of the earth, sin, death, redemption, creation, time, space, matter. Write about these things. Take an alchemist view of how you write, because all the romance and everything, it'll still be in there. And the reason why Jim told Robbie Krieger that is, he said that way our music will be timeless and it will transcend our own lives, rather than singing something about a girl named Sally Ann, which will be forever dated in our era. So there is, I don't want to drone on about that, but there is a universal theme in the desert that a songwriter can soak up if he's willing to make the journey and if he's willing to empty himself and receive what it has to give. If you go out there with a head full of presuppositions, then you're probably not going to benefit from it. You have to go out there and be open.
Yeah, the place and the history and the ghost in the desert survival, that's there.
Absolutely. And for us, it was the Native Americans. Where we're at located, it was completely ran. There's Native American street names and murals everywhere. And the Lakotas and the Kokai tribe and just all of them. There's just so much history here. As well as I'm sure out in your neck of the woods there in Milwaukee. If we took a trip there, I'm sure it's rich with culture and tradition and history. All of these things can be tapped into for any artist, whether they're painting or sculpting or writing a book or trying to make a rock album.
Yeah. You got it, bro. I'll tell you. Hey, I got a funny story. I myself try and hang on to the natural food, but after the Who concert, I went to Max at like 2 a.m, okay? The next day, I'm up at 9 driving to the desert. Up the mountains, up by Alpine. Never did this before. And by the way, when you come down, it's like a big sandbox because there's big boulders. Again, never seen this before. And scared to death because you got pull-offs. And I'm like, you must be kidding. Look, I got a rental car. It's a V6, so I got some yank, And, oh, my God. And what was I doing? Pearl Jam. It was a Pearl Jam weekend. So I'm Pearl Jamming it up the mountain. But you're coming down, and it's like you're going into a big sandbox. And then I had to go to the bathroom. That's what I was trying to say. I had a stomach. Oh, my. It was like the horse with no name looking for water. Nah. I needed a finally I felt at Cerrito. I never made it to the desert. I was like 10 miles away, and I had to get back to San Diego, and I'm like, oh, I really got to go back home. Because I got to go back.
Well, next time you're out here, let me know, and we'll link up with you, and I'll show you some of the better offerings that our area has.
Yeah, because and the other cool thing is you're getting cool as you're going up the mountain, 60, 62, and then all of a sudden you did 78, and I think it was 102 is what I maxed out at or something like that. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
I have fun at all. So, thanks, bro. Let's jam it. John the Revelator. Jason Robert. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Tell me who's that riding? John the Revelator. Tell me who's that riding? John the Revelator. Who's that riding? John the Revelator wrote the book of the 7 seals. Now God walked down in the cool of the day. He called Adam by his name. He refused to answer. He was naked and ashamed. So tell me who's that riding? John the Revelator. Tell me who's that riding? John the Revelator. Who's that riding? John the Revelator wrote the book of the 7 seals. Now Christ had 12 apostles, 3 he led away. Said, watch for me 1 hour while I go yonder and pray. And tell me who's that riding? John the Revelator. Tell me who's that riding? John the Revelator. Who's that riding? John the Revelator wrote the book of the 7 seals. Who's that riding? Tell me who's that riding? Who's that riding? John the Revelator wrote the book of the 7 seals. Martha, they were there, heard every word he said. Go tell my disciples, meet me in Galilee. Oh, Mary and Martha, they were there, heard every word he said. Go tell my disciples, meet me in Galilee. Tell me who's that riding? John the Revelator. Tell me who's that riding? John the Revelator. Who's that riding? John the Revelator wrote the book of the seven seals. Yeah. Who's that riding? Tell me who's that riding? Who's that riding? John the Revelator wrote the book of the seven seals. The book of the seven seals. But if you really feel it, go ahead and feel it. If you're gonna steal it, go ahead and steal. If you're gonna rock it, go ahead and rock. If you're gonna drop it, go ahead and drop. I can see into your heart, I know just what you're feeling. But if you really feel it, go ahead and feel it. If you're gonna steal it, go ahead and steal. If you're gonna rock it, go ahead and rock. If you're gonna drop it like it's hot.